In today's Farm Report, how profitable a farm is can indicate whether it is being successful in its management practices. But, as Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension Service office points out, profits is not the only thing producers should be looking at.
Really overall had really excellent prices here in the upper Midwest, but there's been a lot of discussion, and as I mentioned on Saturday, the outlook, particularly for crop prices in the upcoming year, really isn't very positive. And so the Center for Farm Financial Management looked at their FinBin database and tried to understand and sort out what made farms profitable versus what made farms non-profitable. I think there's a lot of myths that are floating around out there, so they kind of came up with some myths that maybe are not true. First of all, one of the thoughts is that these low-profit farms rent most of their land, or you hear also that high-profit farms rent most of their land. But when they looked at, and again they compared the highest 20% of the profit farms to the lowest 20% of the profit farms. This data is from 10,000 actual farms that kind of are across the whole upper Midwest, and it kind of goes all the way down to Missouri, it goes west, and it goes east to Michigan. And the high profit farms owned about 29% of their land, and the low profit farms owned about 23% of their land. So again, not a really a huge difference. Some of the thought is that these low-profit farmers tend to be young farmers just getting into business. They're not established. Again, there really wasn't a lot of variation. The high-profit farms average 51 years old. The low-profit farms average 48 years old. So neither group is very young. But again, really not a real substantial difference that you might typically think. The other one we often think about is that economics of scale make a huge difference. And these were mostly cash crop farmers, but there really wasn't a difference. In their example, there's about a 20% difference in the number of crops acres, with the higher profit farms being a little bit bigger, but only about 20% bigger, so it isn't like they were double or triple in size. And of course there's some advantages of scale because you dilute some of your fixed costs like your machinery costs. Myth number 4 was that these high profit farms, they always farm the best ground. How they compared this was actually yield, so I'm not sure yield is an indication of best ground. It might be an indication of management practices. But there was about 14 bushels per acre, with the high yielding farms being more profitable. There's also a thought that high profit farms do a lot better job of marketing their crops. There really wasn't a big difference. Again, there was a little bit of difference, about 20 cents a bushel in corn and about 40 cents a bushel in beans. But I guess the moral of the story, at least their conclusion is, and I know this holds true for dairy, is that the high profit farmers just do a whole lot of things a little bit better. They're not extremely good on one thing, or you really can't characterize them. So I guess the moral of the story is, if your farmer is really pay attention to detail and just do everything a little bit better than the other producers, and you'll be in okay shape. This has been Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension at St. Cloud.
U.S. corn growers may set a new record for production in 2016, even though prices have been low.
The outlook is for increased corn planting. Big corn crop.
Agriculture Department Chief Economist Rob Johansson, he says farmers may plant 2 million more acres to corn in 2016, taking plantings up to 90 million. Johansson says at least right now the returns for corn versus cost of production ratios are looking better than soybeans. He also says even with a bigger crop, corn prices may not go down very much at all, being propped up by an increase in domestic use.
Demand for ethanol production will remain strong. Livestock production continues to expand. We're expecting to see record levels of production for all of the livestock categories. That keeps demand for corn high domestically.
But on the world export market,
our producers are going to be facing some stiff competition.
And export sales could fall, but this is all based on what we know now, based on so-called normal weather here and around the world. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Making New Year's resolutions is something everyone does, whether it is to lose weight or maybe keep better track of your money in the new year. Jim Sulphur with the University of Minnesota Extension Service office shares a New Year's resolution for producers on how to help manage your farm this year.
Of course, now that we're into the new year, we all make New Year's resolutions, or not everyone, but I think the research is that a high percentage of people make New Year's resolutions. So I'd like to challenge all people involved with agriculture or that own their own business to really think about making a New Year's resolution to really think a little bit more like a CEO, become the CEO of your business, because I see that as I go to a lot of farms. I think they do a really, really good job on the tactical, day-to-day kind of management things, and I think in agriculture in particular we've been excellent at that, but I think sometimes we don't often think about the external things that are affecting our business, whether it's the strength of the dollar, whether it's oil prices, whether it's some new rules or regulations that are coming, or whether it's a change in local food, and how all of those strategies might change us. And that's really the duties that a CEO has. So again, moving a little bit more from just a management role, day-to-day management, to think a little bit long-term about that. So how do you think about when you make a resolution? First of all, I just found some information that talks about resolutions. So where do you want that resolution to take you? So along the same line about thinking of the future of your business, think about where you want to be. I know there was a push a few years ago that we needed to have 10-year plans for our business. More as I talk to people now that work in that arena, that I personally, I think that's a little unrealistic. We can never predict anything out that far, especially as fast as the world's going right now. So I think even maybe where do I want to be next year, and where do I want to be in 3 years, and where do I want to be in 5 years is a little bit more practical. And then develop kind of a plan, or at least get the people together that can help you develop that plan and move forward on where you want to be. The second part about resolutions, kind of a general resolutions, is what's standing in the way of your resolution. And again, I think that needs to be a part of your plan on as you sit down and think, okay, this is maybe where I want to be in 3 years. Is that realistic? And really, what might stop me from getting there? So there's kind of an action plan that you need to develop to get there, and then think about any obstacles that might be in the way of you achieving your goals. So that's kind of my challenge to people today, is really think forward, think about maybe where you want to be a year from now, 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, and then actually sit down with your management team, sketch that out, and work really hard to achieve those goals. This has been Jim Salfer with the University of Minnesota Extension in St. Cloud.